The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide like a metal cave, filled with beings from across the stars. Hundreds of different species sat in their special chairs, speaking in voices that sounded like music, clicks, and whispers. The air smelled of strange flowers and metal, mixed with the breath of 1,000 different worlds. Ambassador? Liteho sat in the back corner where Earth's seat had been placed. His black hair was touched with gray, and his dark eyes watched everything with the patience of a man who had seen too much war. Round him, the other delegates spoke in their flowing languages, their bodies moving like dancers even when they argued. The Zephyrians were the most beautiful. Their skin looked like living crystal, changing colors with their emotions. They had built gardens on 100 worlds and never raised a weapon against anyone. The Centaurians stood tall as trees, their voices deep and wise. The Aquarians moved, like water, their forms shifting and flowing in ways that made human eyes hurt to watch. Then the message came. It started as a whisper in the quantum communicators, a sound like wind through broken glass. The great hall fell silent as the voice grew stronger, filled with terror and desperation. "Help us," the voice said, and every being in the hall felt their hearts grow cold. This is New Haven Colony in the Kepler 442 system. The Void Swarm has found us. They have broken through our defenses. Our ships are dying. Our people are dying. Please, someone help us. The beautiful Zephyrian delegate began to shake, her crystal skin turning deep blue with fear. New Haven was their greatest colony, home to 12 million souls who had never known violence. They grew food for half the galaxy and made art that brought tears to the eyes of every species that saw it. Council Chairman Vorth rose from his seat, his tree-like form swaying with worry. His voice boomed across the hall like distant thunder. "The nearest fleet is 3 parsecs away, fighting the border wars. We can send supply ships medical aid, but they will take 2 days to reach the system." Everyone knew what that meant. The Void Swarm consumed everything. They were not like other enemies who wanted land or resources. They ate entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. They had destroyed the great libraries of Alderaan. Prime, they had swallowed the singing forests of Melodia. They had turned the crystal cities of Zarian into dust. 2 days will be too late," whispered the Aquarian delegate, her water form rippling with sadness. "The swarm does not wait. They will strip the planet bare in hours." The hall erupted in voices. Some species offered prayers. Others suggested sending messages of comfort to the doomed colony. A few spoke of evacuation plans, though everyone knew there was no time. The Void Swarm moved like a plague across the stars, faster than any fleet could travel. In the back corner, Liteho listened to it all with growing anger, he thought. Of the Zephyrians he had met, gentle beings who had taught his daughter to grow flowers that sang in the morning light. He thought of the children on New Haven who had never seen a weapon, who played in fields of golden grain under alien suns. The other delegates continued their debates, their voices rising and falling like waves. They spoke of protocols and procedures, of the proper way to respond to such disasters. They had rules for everything, forms to fill out, committees to consult. They were civilized beings from civilized worlds, and they acted like it even when facing the end of everything. Finally, Liteho stood up. His movement was quiet, but somehow every eye in the hall turned to him. The human delegate was not impressive to look at. He was shorter than most species, his skin a simple brown color, his clothes plain black fabric. But there was something in his eyes that made even the bravest warriors take a step back. "We'll handle this," he said, his voice cutting through. The noise like a blade through silk. The hall fell silent again. Chairman Vorth's great head turned toward the human, confusion clear in his ancient features. "Ambassador Lee, with respect, Earth has been part of our council for less than a century. Your fleet is small, your technology primitive by our standards. What can you possibly do against the Void Swarm?" Liteho smiled, and it was not a kind expression. It was the smile of a wolf that has caught the scent of blood, the smile of a hunter who has found his prey. "Earth will respond. We'll be there in 18 hours. The other delegates began to speak at once, their voices filled with disbelief and concern. 18 hours was impossible. The fastest ships took 2 days to reach Kepler 442. The humans must be confused, or desperate, or both. But Lee Tae-ho was already walking toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast hall. As he reached the door, he turned back to face the assembly. Chairman Vorth, please send our regrets to the Void Swarm. Tell them they made a mistake. They asked for help from a galaxy that includes humans. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving the council in stunned silence. For the first time in their long history, the representatives of 1,000 peaceful worlds felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. Fleet Admiral Park Min-soo stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching through the thick glass windows as Earth's war fleet prepared for battle. Ship around him hummed with deadly purpose, every surface covered in buttons, screens, and weapons controls. The air tasted of metal and oil, mixed with the sharp smell of fear and determination. Around the massive flagship, 18 heavy cruisers floated in perfect formation. Each ship was a monster of steel and weapons, built not for beauty but for one simple purpose: to kill. Their dark hulls were covered in scars from old battles, marked with the names of destroyed enemies. These were not the graceful vessels that other species built, with their flowing lines and artistic designs. These were tools of war, ugly and brutal and terrifyingly effective. Status report, Park commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years of combat. His gray uniform was simple but clean, marked only by the stars that showed his rank, and the medals that told the story of humanity's rise through blood and fire. Lieutenant Commander Kim Sora stepped forward, her young face already marked by the hard lines that came from seeing too much death. All ships report ready for jump, Admiral. The Retribution, Vindication, and Judgment are loaded with full war stocks. The Captain Choi's Marines are standing by in the assault bays. Park nodded and turned to look at the tactical display that showed the fleet's formation. Each ship was exactly where it needed to be, their captains veterans of the wars that had shaped humanity's path to the stars. The Martian rebellion had taught them to fight in space. The Titan Wars had shown them how to kill without mercy. The Europa campaign had proven that humans could win against any enemy, no matter how strong. "Sir, Communications Officer Yoon," Jamin called out, his fingers dancing across his control panel. "We're receiving updated intelligence from the Zephyrian survivors. The swarm has consumed 3 moons and is beginning atmospheric processing of New Haven's northern continent." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Everyone knew what atmospheric processing meant. The void swarm would strip away the air itself, leaving nothing but a dead rock floating in space. 12 million innocent souls would die, gasping for breath that would never come. Park's jaw tightened. He had seen worlds die before, had watched entire civilizations reduced to ash in memory. But this was different. This time humanity had the power to stop it. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, his voice steady as stone. "All ships, prepare for combat jump. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens the innocent." The massive engines of the human fleet roared to life, their sound echoing through the hulls of every ship. This was technology that the Galactic Council had never seen before, engines that could tear holes in space and time itself. While other species took days to travel between stars, humanity had learned to collapse distance into moments. On the bridge of the destroyer Defiance, Captain Lee Sung-ho watched his crew prepare for battle. His gunners loaded shells the size of small buildings into weapons that could punch through the armor of any ship ever built. His Marines checked, their rifles and plasma grenades, their faces painted with the skull masks that had become humanity's symbol of war. "Captain," his weapons officer reported, "all guns loaded and ready. We have enough ammunition to level a small moon." Sung-ho smiled grimly. "Good. We might need it." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out on every ship. In the engineering bays, technicians made final adjustments to weapons that violated half the treaties in galactic space. In the Marine quarters, soldiers sang the old songs of Earth, the battle hymns that had carried humanity through every war they had ever fought. The command center's officers studied tactical displays and planned the destruction of an enemy that had never known defeat. The fleet's war computers calculated jump coordinates with inhuman precision. The distance to Kepler 442 was measured not in space, but in time. In the seconds it would take for humanity's weapons to reach their targets. Every ship carried enough firepower to crack a planet, and every captain was ready to use it. Jump engines. At full power, reported Chief Engineer Han Min-jae from deep in the ship's belly. We can maintain this pace for 6 hours before we need to cool down. Park nodded. 6 hours would be more than enough. The Void Swarm had never faced an enemy that could reach them in minutes instead of days. They had never fought a species that treated war not as a last resort, but as a natural state of being. All ships report ready for jump, Kim Sora announced. Fleet formation locked and coordinates confirmed. Park looked out at his fleet one last time at the 18 ships that carried the hopes and fury of humanity. Each vessel was crewed by men and women who had been raised on stories of war, who had learned to fight before they learned to read. They were the children of a world that had known nothing but conflict, and they were about to show the galaxy what that meant. Execute jump, he commanded. The stars twisted and bent as reality folded around the human fleet. Space screamed as the ships tore through dimensions that had no names, crossing light years and heartbeats. Behind them, the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as their sensors tracked the impossible speed of humanity's war machine. In 18 hours, the Void Swarm would learn why humans were the apex predators of Sol System. 18 hours. The galaxy would understand what it meant to ask Earth for help. The hunt was about to begin. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like angry gods returning to a world gone mad. Space around them twisted and bent as reality snapped back into place, revealing a scene that would have broken the hearts of any civilized species. New Haven hung in the void like a dying animal. Its once blue oceans now a sickly green color that hurt to look at. The planet's atmosphere was being sucked away in long streams, feeding the massive bioships that floated around it like vultures around a corpse. Each alien vessel was the size of a small city, their surfaces covered in writhing tentacles and pulsing organic matter that seemed to breathe with its own life. Admiral Park Min-soo stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, his face showing no emotion as he watched the destruction. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with the calm efficiency of people who had seen horrors before. The tactical displays showed 43 enemy ships, each one a living nightmare that had consumed entire worlds. Tactical assessment. Park ordered, his voice cutting through the bridge's quiet tension. Commander Kim Sora studied her screens, her fingers dancing across the controls. 43 swarm vessels, ranging from frigate to dreadnought class. They're feeding on the planet's life force. At current consumption rate, the planet will be completely dead in 6 hours. Near the edge of the system, a handful of Zephyrian ships huddled together like frightened children. Their vessels were works of art, made from living crystal, that sang with beautiful music. But against the Void Swarm, they were as helpless as butterflies in a hurricane. Their distress signals filled the communication channels with desperate pleas for evacuation. Sir Captain Lee? Sunko's voice crackled over the cum from the destroyer Defiance. The swarm has detected our arrival. They're turning to face us. The alien bioships began to move, their organic holes rippling like muscle under skin. They had never been challenged before, never faced an enemy that dared to fight them directly. For 1,000 years they had. Swept across the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Species fled before them or died trying to appease them with offerings of food and technology. But these humans were different. They did not run. They did not beg for mercy. They spread out into attack formation like a pack of wolves surrounding their prey, their dark ships moving with deadly purpose. All ships, battle stations, Park commanded, weapons free. Show them what Earth's children do to monsters. The first salvo of human weapons lit up the darkness like a new sun being born. Railgun slugs, each one moving at tremendous speed, punched through the swarm's organic armor as if it were made of paper. The aliens had evolved to absorb energy weapons, to adapt and overcome whatever their enemies threw at them. But these primitive kinetic weapons were something they had never encountered. The lead bioship exploded in a shower of organic matter, its death scream echoing across space in frequencies that made the surviving Zephyrians weep. The swarm's hive mind recoiled in shock. For the first time in their existence, they felt something they had never known: fear. "Direct hit on target Alpha," reported Weapons Officer Han Minjae, his voice steady despite the carnage on his screens. "The ship is completely destroyed, sir. Nothing left but floating debris," but the swarm adapted quickly. Their remaining ships began to change, their armor thickening and hardening against the human weapons. New defensive systems sprouted from their hulls like cancer, designed to stop the deadly projectiles that had killed their brother. The humans responded by switching weapons. Thermonuclear warheads detonated in brilliant flowers of destruction, each one carrying enough power to level a city. Particle beams carved through alien flesh like invisible swords. Plasma torpedoes melted armor that had withstood the weapons of a dozen different species. Captain Song Hai-jin, of the heavy cruiser Retribution, pushed her ship directly into the heart of the enemy formation, her crew firing everything they had at the massive bioships that surrounded them. Her vessel shook under alien fire, its armor plating glowing red from the heat of enemy weapons. "Hull breach on Deck 7, her damage control officer reported. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal it off," Song ordered without taking her eyes off the tactical display. "Keep firing." The human ships fought like their crews had been trained to fight, with ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for their own safety. They had not come to preserve their beautiful vessels or to minimize casualties. They had come to kill monsters. And they were very good at it. The Void Swarm's bioships began to fall back, their organic hulls torn and bleeding from wounds that would not heal. The hive mind that controlled them was experiencing something new and terrible: the knowledge they could lose. From their evacuation ships, the surviving Zephyrians watched the battle with growing amazement and horror. These humans fought like demons, their weapons spitting death across the void. They showed no mercy, no hesitation, no fear. They were everything the civilized galaxy was not: brutal, efficient, and utterly committed to victory. "The swarm is trying to retreat," reported Lieutenant Commander Kim Sora. "They're breaking off their attack on the planet." Admiral Park's expression never changed. His next words would echo through galactic history, spoken with the cold certainty of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain. Negative. No survivors. Hunt them down. The real battle was just beginning. The Void Swarm had never retreated from a battle before. For over 1,000 years, they had swept across the galaxy like a cosmic storm, consuming everything in their path. Entire civilizations had fallen before them, their fleets destroyed, their worlds stripped bare. But now, as the human weapons tore through their ranks, the hive mind that controlled them felt something it had never experienced: the cold touch of defeat. The bioships tried to adapt, their organic hulls shifting and changing to counter the human weapons. When the railgun slugs punched through their armor, new layers of bone and metal grew to stop them. When the plasma torpedoes burned through their flesh, cooling systems sprouted like tumors to dissipate the heat. But for every adaptation, the humans had a countermeasure. Admiral Park Min-soo watched the battle from his command chair, his face carved from stone. Around him, his crew worked with machine-like precision, their voices calm and professional, even as death filled the space around them. This was what humanity had trained for, what they had prepared for since the first time they looked up at the stars and wondered what waited for them there. "The swarm is switching to bioweapons," reported Commander Kim Sora, her voice tight with concentration. "They're releasing some kind of acid cloud. It's eating through the hull of the Defiance." "Tell Captain Lee to fall back and seal his compartments," Park ordered. "Switch to antimatter charges, full spread." The human ships unleashed weapons that had been banned by every galactic treaty ever written. Antimatter charges exploded in brilliant flashes of pure energy, each one carrying enough power to crack a moon. The swarm's bioships screamed as matter and antimatter collided, creating wounds that could not heal, damage that could not be repaired. But the humans were not finished when the swarm adapted to their antimatter weapons. They switched to gravity bombs that folded space itself into weapons of destruction. When the aliens countered with some kind of dark energy shield, the humans responded with exotic matter that ignored the laws of physics and tore. Through reality like paper, Captain Song Haijin pushed her ship deeper into the enemy formation. Her crew firing everything they had at the massive bioships that surrounded them. The Retribution's hull was glowing white-hot from enemy fire, but she refused to retreat. This was how humans fought, not with elegant tactics or careful strategy, but with raw determination and the willingness to pay any price for victory. Boarding torpedoes ready, she reported to the Admiral, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Marines are prepared for deployment. Launch them," Park commanded. "Show the swarm what happens when they mess with our friends." The boarding. Torpedoes shot out from the human ships like bullets from a gun, each one carrying a squad of Marines armed with weapons that would have made other species weep. They punched through the swarm's organic hulls and deployed their deadly cargo into the alien ship's bowels. Colonel Park Jun-ho led the assault into the heart of the enemy vessel, his plasma rifle spitting death at the writhing creatures that came to meet them. The swarm's warrior forms were perfectly evolved killing machines, designed to tear apart any enemy they encountered. But they had never faced human Marines, soldiers who had been raised on stories of war and trained to fight from the moment they could walk. "Clear the corridor," Jun-ho ordered, his voice amplified by his suit's speakers. No survivors, no mercy. The Marines moved through the bioship like a disease, their weapons cutting through alien flesh and bone with mechanical precision. They used depleted uranium bullets that could punch through armor, plasma grenades that melted everything they touched, and vibroblades that could cut through molecular bonds. Themselves, the swarm's hive mind recoiled in horror as its warrior forms fell one by one. These humans fought like nothing it had ever encountered, showing no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. They were death incarnate, wrapped in metal and fury. "The swarm is trying to withdraw completely," reported Lieutenant Commander Kim Sora. "They're abandoning their attack on the planet and heading for the jump point." Park's smile was cold as winter on a dead world. "Negative. Hunt them down. Every last one." The human fleet pursued the fleeing bioships with relentless determination. They had not come to drive off the swarm or to negotiate a peace treaty. They had come to eliminate a threat to innocent people, and they would not stop until every enemy was dead, one by one. The swarm vessels were cornered and destroyed. The humans showed no mercy, no quarter, no compassion for their enemies. They hunted with the patience of apex predators and the fury of a species that had fought its way to the top of the food chain through blood and determination. From their evacuation ships, the surviving Zephyrians watched in stunned silence as their rescuers proved more terrifying than their attackers. These humans didn't just fight the swarm. They hunted it with systematic efficiency, cutting off every escape route and destroying every ship with cold precision. The last bioship tried to flee toward the outer system, its organic hull trailing fluids and debris. But the human destroyer, Judgment, caught up with it, its weapons reducing the alien vessel to scattered atoms. "All enemy vessels destroyed," reported the tactical officer. "No survivors detected." The first time in over 1,000 years the Void Swarm had been completely defeated, and the galaxy would never be the same. The last swarm bioship died in a flash of light that could be seen across the entire star system. Its organic hull split apart like a flower blooming in reverse, spilling its alien contents into the cold vacuum of space. The explosion marked the end of something that had never happened before in galactic history. It's the complete destruction of a Void Swarm fleet. Admiral Park Min-soo stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest enemy. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing no joy or celebration. This had been work, nothing more. Dangerous work that needed to be done, like killing a rabid animal or clearing a toxic waste site. All enemy vessels. "Confirmed destroyed," reported Commander Kim Sora, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had accomplished. "No survivors detected. The threat to New Haven has been eliminated." Park nodded once, then turned his attention to the damaged planet below. New Haven hung in space like a wounded bird, its atmosphere slowly beginning to clear as the swarm's bioweapons dissipated. The green poison that had covered the oceans was fading, replaced by the natural blue that had made the world so beautiful. "Signal the fleet," Park ordered. "Begin relief operations. I want medical teams on the surface within the hour." The human ships moved with the same deadly precision they had shown in battle. But now their weapons were replaced with medical supplies and construction equipment. The same hands that had fired weapons capable of cracking planets now carried medicine to the wounded and food to the starving. On New Haven's largest moon, a refugee camp had been set up for the surviving Zephyrians. Dr. Lim Hae-young moved through. The crystal-skinned aliens with gentle efficiency, her medical scanners checking for injuries and radiation poisoning. The Zephyrians watched her with something close to worship, their beautiful faces filled with gratitude and wonder. "The planet's biosphere can be restored," she reported to Admiral Park over the communication link. "The swarm's damage looks terrible, but most of it is surface level. Give us 6 months and New Haven will be growing food again." It is. Colony leader approached Park as he inspected the relief efforts. The alien's crystal skin had been scarred by the swarm's bioweapons, but his eyes still held the gentle wisdom of his people. He moved slowly, as if approaching a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. "Admiral de Zephyrian said, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "We cannot find words to thank you. You've saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization. How can we ever repay such a debt?" Park looked at the alien leader with the same expression he had worn during the battle, calm, professional, and completely without emotion. "You don't owe us anything. We did what needed to be done." The Zephyrian's crystal features shifted color, showing confusion and amazement. "But you risked everything for us. Your ships, your people, your lives. Why would you do such a thing? For strangers? Because you asked for help?" Park replied simply. "And because it was the right thing to do?" Far across the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The great hall that had once been filled with peaceful debate now buzzed with fear and excitement. Now the reports coming in from Kepler 442 had shaken the foundations of Saus. Everything they believed about war and peace. "They didn't just defeat the Void Swarm," reported the Centurion intelligence chief, his tree-like form swaying with agitation. "They annihilated them. Completely. Every ship destroyed, every creature killed. In less than 6 hours, humanity accomplished what no military force in galactic history had ever managed." Ambassador Lee Taeho sat quietly in his chair, his face showing no emotion as the other delegates stared at him with a mixture of awe and terror. The galaxy had spent centuries perfecting art, philosophy, and peaceful coexistence. They had built beautiful cities, composed music that could make angels weep, and created technologies that seemed like magic. They had forgotten how to fight. Humanity had never forgotten. While other species reached for the stars with songs and poetry, humans had climbed out of their gravity well with weapons in their hands and war in their hearts. They had brought to the galaxy the one thing it had been missing, the will to fight for what was right. "The question before us," said Chairman Vorth, his ancient voice heavy with new understanding, "is what this means for the future. Humanity has shown us capabilities we never imagined. Military technologies that violate our most basic understanding of warfare, a willingness to use force that goes beyond anything in our experience. In the depths of space, far from the light of any star, something stirred in the darkness. The Void Swarm was not just a collection of ships and creatures, it was a hive mind that stretched across the galaxy, connecting every member of the species through bonds that went deeper than thought itself. And now, for the first time in their existence, that hivemen felt fear. The survivors of the New Haven attack sent out a message that would echo through the dark corners of the galaxy for generations to come. It was not a message of conquest or expansion, but of warning. Simple communication that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Avoid the Sol system. Avoid the species called humans. They are not prey. They're predators. They are death itself. The message had been simple. Help us. Earth had come armed, and the galaxy would never be the same.